Good morning to everybody that's just logging in. We're going to give it a moment or two as people come on and officially kick it off at 9:01. I want to say good morning to everybody that's joined us today. Welcome to the first part of our Renovations and Home Modifications for Aging in Place webinar series. And thank you for joining us. For everybody that survived the storms and the rain last night, this is not a basement flooding webinar. We're going to focus on aging in place, but I hope everybody's managed to stay dry. We have an incredible 90 people registered today. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Mike Collins-Williams, and I am the CEO of the West End Home Builders Association. We are very excited to be co-hosting this webinar with the Ontario Home Builders Association and inform the renovators and trade contractors in Ontario about the increasing demand and value of home modification for aging in place. I'd like to now introduce the OHBA representative and webinar moderator for today, Jamie Adam. Jamie is president and a third-generation owner of Pioneer Craftsman, a renovation firm in Kitchener specializing in design, build, renovation solutions for homeowners in the Waterloo region. Jamie is a past president of the Waterloo Region Home Builders Association. He's a past chair of the Canadian Home Builders Association's Renovators Council, and he's currently chair of the Ontario Home Builders Association Renovation Council. I spent many years working with Jamie at the provincial level, and I'm very excited to have him join us today at the West End Home Builders Association. Welcome, Jamie, and over to you.
Right. Thank you very much, Mike, and welcome everybody. I guess I'd like to start off just by saying thanks to the West End HBA for hosting this webinar, putting it together. It's been a while coming, but it's a very important topic, and I'm thrilled to be moderating today. So thanks, Mike. As Mike said, I am the current chair of the OHBA Reno Council. I'm also the outgoing chair of the Renovation Council. We'll have somebody new coming in very shortly. So as I said, I'm very happy to be chairing this webinar. It is the first of a two-part series where we're going to focus on setting the stage for understanding the market, who that dream team consists of to successfully pull off these home modifications, and we're going to learn a little bit about CHBA's Adaptive Home Council. So really looking forward to what we've got to hear from our expert panelists today. Before I introduce our speakers, though, I would like to turn it over to Joanne Van Panhouse from Enbridge, just to say a few words. Joanne and Enbridge are our sponsors for today. So Joanne.
Great, thank you. And on behalf of Enbridge Gas, I want to welcome everyone participating in today's Aging in Place Renovations and Home Modifications webinar. Enbridge is very proud to be able to support our local home builders associations with such valuable and timely information sessions. In addition to this session, Enbridge also sponsors a monthly webinar series which focus on energy efficiency options for new builds. Our next session is on September 16th, and we'll discuss indoor air quality and the impact it has on occupant health. If you're interested in this session or any of the others, additional details and registration links can be found at buildingknowledge.ca under the events section. Now, on behalf of Enbridge, we look forward to having you participate and to the opportunity to be your energy provider of choice. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Jamie.
All right. Thank you very much, Joanne. So again, just a couple of little housekeeping items before we get started. We want to make sure that we have a little bit of time for Q&A. We're going to save that all till the end. We've got 1 hour for this webinar, so we'll save all the questions and answers until the end. If you wouldn't mind sticking them in the Q&A section or even the chat, and I will do my best at the end to answer or have our experts answer as many of the questions as we possibly can. So let's get started. We've got Leisha Dyke, Dawn Fenn, and Dina McNeil, who we're going to be hearing from today. And Dawn is going to be our first speaker. Quick introduction for Dawn. Dawn has spent a lifetime as a business owner, a social entrepreneur, and an innovator. He is president and CEO of Caregiver Omni Media and a founding member of CHPA's Home Modification Council. Dawn serves on multiple boards and advisory committees, speaks internationally, and has many honors, including the 2012 Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal for his contribution to Canada in family caregiving. So, Dawn, with that, I will turn it over to you. Take it away.
Thank you, Jamie. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for your interest in this most timely and important issue. Social issue, a health issue, and a business opportunity. So let's talk about the emerging market of aging in place. We're going to talk about some trends, some opportunities. I'm going to show you some updated research, definitions, products and services, renovation versus modification, and the market value and size of this emerging market. So next slide, please. So what is an emerging market? An emerging market is one that is growing very rapidly, but is not yet fully developed. Some of these markets were the computer market, if you remember back as far as I can, when we started with just easy computers, and then now look at where we are. The luxury market, similarly, the market was really always just mid-market for everything, and then people had more money, and all of a sudden the luxury market came along and changed the whole world. And very much you're going to hear today that the seniors market is the tsunami that we knew was coming, but haven't really adapted to it. It's an emerging market. It's not yet fully developed. Seniors are now in demographic sectors. And so all of this is making for some very interesting housing situations. Slide. So our experience, by the way, personally, has been in markets that relate to the housing market. We've Architectural Digest in the luxury market. We worked with them for 18 years, and we're part of the launch of People magazine in Canada. Reader's Digest, we worked with on a publication for seniors. I was involved in the launch of the skiing magazine and really the skiing market in 1964, when all of a sudden skiing was on television. And before being on television at the Olympics, skiing was only done by people with very wealthy backgrounds and who basically lived where snow is. Then aging boomers came along, and all of a sudden they've added to the marketplace. So I was involved with Martha Stewart Living and its induction into Canada. And again, emerging market where she came and stole a lot of the market from a lot of other people in the US and around the world. Then I was involved with HGTV, both in the US and Canada, on the launch pad of that. So I was learning through the research that HGTV and these big publishing companies and media companies were doing in the emerging market area. And then we actually got involved in Wellness Web, which I sold in 1999 to WebMD in the US. So I had a digital background as well. So all that compasses together to take a good look at aging in place in the wealth of experience that we bring to it. Slide. So aging in place refers to having the proper health and social supports to allow one to live in a place they call home or community as long as possible. And the health and social supports are really important, but the key is to modify your home to your mobility issues and your physical environment. And we're going to talk about that, and that's why an occupational therapist is part of the program today. Slide. So renovation is a wants market, and home modification is a needs market. And renovation is direct to consumer, and modification is direct to consumer, but also it's a referral from home and community, from healthcare, auto accident insurance companies, brain injury, dementia, stroke recovery programs, etc. Veterans Affairs are very large in the home modification area through a Wounded Warrior program where they will spend up to $500,000 to modify a Wounded Warrior soldier who has come back with health problems or mobility problems after bombs and all the rest of it. There's a lot of standards that are being developed, and that's why in an emerging market, there is really, it's like the Wild West, but the AODA standards and CSA are working with the accessibility sector and the home modification sector to produce standards and regulations. And so all that is in play and is being meeting as we speak. In the renovator market, it's learn as you go. In the modification market, you need to have some specific training. And the CHBA adaptive course is going to be discussed later on in this program. So I won't get into that, but we were very much instrumental in making that happen. And most professional modifiers had experience with disabilities prior to becoming a contractor specializing in this market. As I've met contractors across the span, one of the things that I've always asked them is, how did you get involved in this marketplace? And the interesting question was, well, my dad or my mom or my sister had some kind of a disability and I was the only handy guy in the house. And so I modified the house for by building a stair lift or by building a ramp or helping them along. So that's really where most of the home modification contractor renovator employers come from. The biggest difference between renovation and modification, home modification requires in most cases a team approach. And Alessia Dyke will talk a little bit more about the team approach, but contractor, the occupational or physical therapist, the accessible architectural designer, and we work very closely in the industry with accessible or assistive device vendors. So those that sell the stair lifts, those that sell it have a real vast experience in dealing with contractor renovators, but also in dealing with homeowners. Then the assessments. This is the very, again, big different from a renovator who goes in and works with the homeowner. The assessment is done by an occupational therapist or a physical therapist. And once that environment and the person in the home is assessed, then she works with, or he works with the contractor renovator to allow for the discussion plans to be drawn up and approved by the homeowner. And basically it's sort of the triumvirate of the homeowner, the contractor renovator, and the OT working together. Slide. So when we first started investigating this market back in 2006, there was really no information available. We all knew it was happening. We put together an industry group to basically talk about it. We roundtabled it over several months. And then we went to March of Dimes Canada and basically asked if they would like to take part and sponsor a national research program on home modification. They are the largest funders. Slide. So March of Dimes Canada is the leading home modification funding program. They're only really do the funding in Ontario, but they're trying to expand it. And one of the reasons we did the research was in order to go back to all levels of government to ask for more funding, because we're totally inadequate in both public policy and funding as relates to the governments. So the home and vehicle modification program provides basic income up to $15,000 per applicant. And then once the funds are approved, the applicant chooses his or her own renovator contract to do the work. But basically it's done, enable children and adults with mobility restrictions to continue living at home, avoid job loss, and participate in their community. So that's the March of Dimes physical disability, but they found very quickly that the aging community in their own communities was applying for the grants more than the disability community. And we'll talk about that. Slide. So recent trends of their modification program pertinent to the research. Applications for individuals over the age of 65 has risen to the last 3 or 4 years. Has risen in the last 3 or 5 years. In 2020, approximately 66% of all applicants were 65 plus. If you take the sort of trending numbers there, it looks like there's about $27 million over the last 4 or 5 years that's been spent just through the program. However, their funding only gives $10 million per year, so totally inadequate. Slide. The survey that we did was across Canada. It was 4,507 respondents age 18 to 85 into sectors of physical disabilities, those general population, and then those over the age of 65. And the project in the total 18 to 85 population, as reported by Statistics Canada, we came within 5% margin of error. So it's an excellent, well-regarded, but done by Vivintel and Vividata, which is a national consumer strategy and research company, basically measuring consumer trends. So they knew what we were looking in this emerging market. Slide. So here's the results. I'm going to just run through some of those. I'm going to be talking quickly because we're covering so much. We had to compact it down into 15 to 20 minutes. So, but what we did find was 57% or 17,183,250,000 people, Canadians aged 18 to 85, have a physical condition. So that's pretty important. And even StatsCan was kind of amazed at that figure because it's higher than their trending figure from 2016, which was about 49%. Slide. So we asked them, have they modified their home? 28% of Canadians age 18 to 64 made home modifications. But we asked them why, and basically it's all related to care. So all the statistics you're going to say are not here because I want a $92,000 kitchen. They're here because I need to help somebody stay at home and live at home as long as possible by modifying the home for their health. So 28% of Canadians aged 18 to 64 said that they had modified their home for reasons related to care. 27% of Canadians aged 65 said they made home modifications for reasons related to care. But let's look what happened when we asked them if they plan to modify their homes. 35% of Canadian aged 18 to 64 plan to modify for reasons relating to care in the next 2 years, but that jumps to 40% if you ask people over the age of 65. Slide. So what are the reasons for Canadians to have modified their home? Basically to support an individual with disability, yourself or someone else, to live more independently in the home. So it's either your mom or dad if you're in your 30s or 40s right now, maybe even into your 50s where your mom and dad are still in their home and they would like to live there longer. They don't want to go into long-term care. They don't want to go into retirement living. It's too expensive, as the research told us. Assisted living, all that stuff is really off the table right now for most seniors over the age of 65 in Canada based on the research. So they also wanted to look at avoid inappropriate or early admission to hospital. So they're having some health conditions and they don't want to go to the hospital. And they don't want to go to a long-term care facility for sure. We did this research last October. So basically it was at the height of the COVID-19 long-term care scare and tragedy. And so some of these were probably even more suggestive figures than they would have been asked at other times. To support home care services, if you're in a renovator contract and you don't understand home care, go to your local home care association or your local home care agencies and take them out to lunch and talk to them about what they need, because they're going to be a huge lead generator for you. And we just want to delay admission to hospital or long-term care facility. They just don't want to go there. And those figures will be borne out in the survey as well. Next. So 20% of those people in the study, or 20% of all Canadians, 6,097,391, are over the age of 65. That may come as a surprise. There's more Canadians over the age of 65 than there are children under 16. So, it's a whole sea change that's emerging as this discussion. This market is just going to grow over the next 30 years, and it's a key ingredient in modifying the home as your customer. And they're going to do it because their physical condition is deteriorating and they know it. Slide. So we asked the modifications to an existing home is more cost effective than living in a retirement home or long-term care facility. 63%, age 18 to 64, said that they totally agree with that. But look at what happens when we talk to the age 65 plus. 83% say that they know that modifications is more cost effective than living in a retirement home or long-term care facility. So, and just to give you an idea on that, for those of you that haven't inquired for your own family, the average for a assisted living or retirement community home in Ontario is about $5,200 a month. Next. Here's the real kicker, guys. This is really where the rubber meets the road, because this is finally a chance for us to get into the market of housing, where the market, how much did you spend on your modification in the past? And they spent $56 billion over the past 2 years when we estimated the amount, because we asked them, how much do you think you spent? Around $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. The average was $8,800. And then we asked them, what's the estimated amount you plan to spend to modify your home in the next couple of years? And it's $87 billion. The whole new build market is $100 billion in 2020. So those of you who bean count should be looking very, very closely at not only the $87 billion figure that's going to be spent, because certainly Home Depot is looking at that with us, but looking at the 11 million Canadians who said, we're going to plan to modify for reasons of health within the next 2 to 5 years. So this is a huge market. Just to give you sort of some kind of benchmarks on it, we looked at all other markets in Canada, and let's just say that for reasons of the 90 people who are attending today are in an age group of between 30 and 65, the residential hockey market in Canada is worth $11 billion. So big, big market. Next. Yes, and people know that, pre-selling anything is a real plus. And a renovator contractor, knowing that 78% of the people who plan to modify know that it's going to help me age in place. So there's a really good, happy feeling you've got as a contractor renovator to be able to approach and market to these people, because they really do know that it's going to help them. Next. Pretty key to this is it's also a market for your current customer. Everybody knows in marketing that your best customer is somebody you sold before. So going back to people that you might have renovated for over the last 20 years or 10 years or even 5 years, and asking them if they now want to have some modifications done as they've been aging in that home, you're going to find that, yes, we do need to have some adjustments made so that we can stay in this house longer, because we're not planning on selling, and it's where are we going to go if we can. So we all know that story. So even in the high income brackets, 75,000, 100,000 plus, 50,000 plus, it's a great market. But most important, if you're looking at research the way we do, what really is important is 3.8 million Canadian adults that want to modify their home over the next few years are under the poverty line. The poverty line in Canada is about 49,000 household income per year. So we need to have government help. And that's the reason that this research was done, so that we are taking this on the road to all provinces, the feds and everybody else, and even locally, to impress upon them the need for more funding in this direct area to help people stay in their homes and out of long-term care. Next. The role of the occupational therapist is usually where I talk now, but I've got Lesha Dyke with us today, so we'll just move on to the next slide. She will be covering this role. So I want to make sure that we understand a little bit, though, that of the people who planned to modify their home, only 18% of those people who spent the money before had used an occupational therapist to have an assessment done. 22% plan to in the next 2 years, but 60% did not even use or contact an occupational therapist. Now, that's an occupational therapist problem, and we are addressing it, and I think it's going to change drastically over the next several years, but it must be understood, as our research showed, that the need for the assessment is important, but the lack of it is there. Next. So, demographic changes, technical changes, and COVID-19 are reshaping the way we live, particularly in the place we call home. As the Canadian population ages, demand for home and community care services has increased, creating pressure on the entire healthcare sector. This pressure is influencing major shifts to healthcare funding. These shifts are essentially to fill gaps that have been languishing due to a lack of inadequate policy on how we house Canadians with disabilities and those growing older with chronic health and mobility issues. The importance of the March of Dimes research project reopens the conversation with some new facts important and relevant to the ongoing discussion on modifying the home for disability-related reasons and aging in place. It's the first of its kind ever done on a national basis and to a wide audience of Canadian consumers. During COVID-19, many important research progress focused on the long-term care situation. The Canadian Institute for Health Information, which is the premier health research company, in August 20 released this statement on their website. 1 in 9 new long-term care residents potentially could have been cared for at home. This represents more than 5,000 long-term care spaces that could be, as you know, there's a 30,000 monthly waiting list for long-term care. This represents 5,000 long-term care spaces that could have been made available. While we have much more data for this research undertaking, it's our hope that you'll call us to further outline the information on providing care and the challenges to modifying our homes for health services delivery. And one more thing, next slide. I can't stress enough, because we actually started a business, an accessibility audit division for renovator contractors to take advantage of. This particular job we did in May 2021 was a small apartment building in downtown Toronto. It had been built in 1906. It's gone through so many code changes and modifications and renovations that it was just a mess. But we brought a team together with Lesha, a renovator contractor, a facilities manager, and an architectural designer. And basically we put together an audit over time that was able to move this 12-unit apartment building to a 16-unit on the same footprint, and it would be a $3 to $5 million job modification. So some modifications are just some grab bars that go in, and it may be $500 to $1,000 job. Most are at that $8,800 to $30,000 to $50,000 range. But I wanted to make sure that you understood that this is a growing market. This happened to be a co-op housing project. So CMHC was involved with this with the program. So a very, very interesting concept that we've developed here, and we're looking to do more accessibility audits through the team approach. But I just wanted to make sure. I will share that with anybody that would like to see it or any part of this presentation. Just have Elena or contact me directly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. That was fantastic. I think it really is a social, health, and a business issue. You made that case very, very clearly. So thank you. I also really like that comment about trying to partner with some home care agencies and organizations. And we all know the importance of the Home Builders Association in our business, and the more connections we could make, the better. So thanks for that, Don. Fantastic. So we want to move on to Leisha Dyke. Leisha is going to talk to us about building that dream team for our adaptive home renovations. So a little bit about Leisha. Leisha has been in practice as an occupational therapist for over 25 years and founded Leisha Dyke OT Services in 1998. Sorry. Leisha's services have diversified over the years and provides not only clinical services, but also educational support and consultation services, specifically in the accessibility arena. Leisha works with McMaster University in the Rehabilitation Science Program, is a past president of the College of Occupational Therapists of Ontario, and is a founding member of CHPA's Home Modification Council, which, as Dina is going to talk to us about, is now referred to as the Adaptive Home Renovation Council. But so that is Laisha. I will pass it over to you and take it away.
Sure, I'm just going to share the screen. Hang on one sec, here we go. Thank you, guys. I just wanted to add one of, I think my most important qualification to talk to you today is the fact that I'm a paying member of the CHBA, of actually the WEHBA. When I finished my 2-year term on the council, I had a decision to make, and the decision for me was clear. I think that this organization is pretty incredible. Working in the auto sector, we deal with a lot of people who get their modifications done in the gray market, or having family and friends do the work to save, to save some insurance money. And with that frustration of knowing that work was really being done suboptimally, and sometimes there was a huge safety issue, I developed a contractor questionnaire that actually was reviewed by Gary Sharp, who used to be the director of the Home Modification Council. And it is now part of the offerings that we have at the Canadian Association for Occupational Therapists. So I have to thank CHBA for that. And my goal really is for every occupational therapist who's working in this arena to be able to say, I can't recommend a contractor for you, but here's a website, and here are the contractors in your area that belong to a CHBA chapter. We can stand behind their work. So without further ado, I'm going to talk a little bit today about the reasons for home modification. So from an OT perspective, most of the time we're called when there's a hospital discharge, and usually there's a sudden injury or health issue like a stroke. And you may be quite aware with hospitals today that really they don't keep you in long. So as soon as you meet a benchmark that they feel that you can be safe at home, off you go. Often in families, there's a change in mobility or health status. Somebody has a fall. In a different population, there's often future planning for a child or for a young adult with disability. And if the family feels they're going to stay in this environment, they will invest some money to make some changes. But really the biggest one, and the one that we're talking about really, is that aging in place planning. And people now are doing this more proactively and rather than reactively. So what is out there? Really, there's not a lot in terms of funding, and I think Dawn's presentation made that very clear. Discharge planners try to make the most appropriate referrals, but really there's not a lot of time, and really there's no money. The home care program is really a care program. Discharge criteria can literally be, can go up and down a flight of stairs. And so people really come home and they find that they're stuck. They may be able to get people into the house, but often not out of the house, and not into their bathrooms or the bedrooms, or sometimes even in the kitchens. So homeowners need to really navigate the system, and they don't know how to do it. And so they're really looking to us, and I mean all of us, to navigate through a system and get technical assistance on things that they may not know even exist. So who's the dream team? The dream team, I look at this as like a multi-lane highway, where the client and or the homeowner sets the goals and priorities. Family or caregivers contribute and really give collateral information, but also can really inform the needs of the modification based on their own size, stature, whatever. The OT assesses function, plans for current and future needs, and communicates and consults in the process. And when I talk about assessing function, I'll get into that a little bit and kind of clarify where we go with this. Other healthcare professionals, while they may not necessarily be in the build process, we often look to them as occupational therapists to provide and inform what the needs are going to be in the future. So the prognosis, because what we want to do is not build for today. We want to build something for somebody who's going to last. or whether the changes in their own health. So that's a really important thing to look at. Designers and architects are design build firms. They really create design and space for the whole family. And most importantly, create a space that's harmonious with the rest of the home. I think one of the things that I have found that has been a barrier for people wanting to modify their homes is feeling like they're going to be, given some or delivered something that is pretty institutional looking. And my mantra is nobody wants to live in ugly. So we want to make sure that we create and design these spaces that are, yes, safe, they're practical, they're accessible, but moreover, they're beautiful. People want to live and enjoy their homes. Of course, the renovator contractors, design build firms, we don't have to tell you what your job is, but the other little added pieces, those equipment vendors who provide access equipment and products. And the one thing I just want to point out there, based on the experience, it is their job and responsibility to ensure things like weight ratings are adhered to. It's our job to really give the renovator contracts an accurate picture of what a client's weight is. And so we're often the tasked to get that very sensitive information, but sometimes, 10, 15 pounds up and down can really make a difference in whether a stair lift is going to work. So aging in place, it really means having the health and social supports and services that you need to live safely and independently in your home or in your community for as long as you wish or able. And that's a really important thing. We have to sort of think out of the box and make sure that people have everything that they need around them. And, they need to have, to be close to their social network, to their shopping, to transportation. Adults, older adults, and their adult children are driving this process. And I don't think you have to really think very long to think of commercials that you've seen on television. They're speaking to those adult children of older adults, and helping them persuade them to look at a different option for their parents. Often it's not aging in place, but that's really changing because of COVID. People really do want to stay in place. If there's no disability or no difficulty with functional activities, a screen really maybe is all that's needed rather than in-depth assessment. And general aging in place recommendations can be used in addition to customized solutions where needed. So telling you a little bit about the role of OT. When I met Gary Sharp, I'm not telling tales out of school because he tells the story all the time. He actually didn't know what an occupational therapist was. And Don Fenn referred to us as OTs. And he was like, what is that, like overtime? He had no idea that we existed. So we are a regulated health care profession. Our role really is to look at function, and we do so by looking at the health condition, looking at disability information. And when we're working in home modification, we're really looking for what's the reason of that home modification assessment. And sometimes we have to do a little bit of digging, and we find that somebody complains about X, but really it's X, Y, and Z that we're having to deal with here. We identified functional barriers in the home based on activities of daily living. We look at fall history and perceived risk, but we also look at actual risk. And that really is an important thing because sometimes people are quite reticent to have some real basic things done. And we can be the ones to help convince them that a little bit of insurance, not to have their hip broken and then end up in care, can be really worth that modification. We are often dealing with that coordination of hospital discharge. And an interesting thing that we do is often we sort of think through and MacGyver or help MacGyver a temporary situation while that home modification can take place. So we're looking at setting things up in bedrooms and different rooms and access and getting care services in while a renovation is happening or a modification is happening in a different area of the house. And then within a month or two, that client then can move back in. The OT can really add scope to the project and drive business. And I think that's probably one of the things that was a concern was how much is an OT assessment going to cost? Who's going to pay for it? You know, what's really the value here? Is it like, are these, some of these things pretty obvious? You know, maybe I can see them, but sometimes looking at things in a different lens can yield other short-term and long-term recommendations. So for example, you know, in the accessibility review that I did with Don that he just referred to at the end of his presentation, they were looking at really inside the home, and they were actually, or in their residences. And they wanted to know what it would take to make them accessible. And they were talking about bathrooms and entrance and so on. What really looked at the pathways, parking, and entry and access to the home was pretty much a catastrophe. And we ended up telling the board, there's no use modifying the inside of the homes unless you're really looking at the hard landscaping outside as well. They did have some ramping, which was very old, unsafe, and definitely not to code. We highlighted that as an issue for them as a priority to get those things done, as a liability and risk issue for them. And so those are the kinds of things that, you know, we can bring up, but then we can highlight that as a real priority. There's no use getting something accessible, a bathroom inside the home, if you can't get in and out of the home by yourself. I'm going to talk a little bit about falls because this seems to be you know, a growing topic and people are hearing about this. So 85% of seniors that are hospitalized have an associated injury that has to do with a fall. Over 1/3 of seniors that are admitted to long-term care have had a fall and sort of had pneumonia and other issues as a result of a fall and then can't go back home. So that's a really staggering number. And, you know, we've looked at some of the literature and the meta-analysis, so looking at different studies, demonstrated a 21% reduction in falls across all studies, and 39% reduction amongst high-risk older adults following an environmental modification. So if you modify your home, your risk for falling is significantly less. So what is the business case for using an occupational therapist? What we find is nobody wants to think of themselves as old. OT training uses language that fits easy with living, work simplification, functional. We also are trained, you know, doing interview techniques and doing structured interviews to gather health information. Because we're health care professionals, we can predict some of the issues that based on what we know about a client's health background and really sort of follow those through. And we can also ask the tough questions around things like toileting and showering and those kinds of things where you may not be really comfortable asking somebody if they have the range of motion in their back and can they rotate and can they, you know, clean their bottoms independently. I always think of OT as being cheap insurance for the contractor. Occupational therapists are regulated healthcare professions. And so that means is that whenever I make a recommendation, I have to really take a very, very sort of standardized process that our college puts out for us, what are our minimum standards of practice. And if there is an issue or a complaint and it's found that I haven't followed that standard, really that can be my license and my reputation right there. So our college is not a professional association. It's their duty is to protect the public. And so for that reason, occupational therapists have to be team players, and we have to really ensure that we're doing right by our clients because it's our profession, professional reputation at risk. And the one thing I want to leave too is that sometimes we are doing the education piece because people feel that they can read up on universal design, but it's not universal. And not everybody, for example, has the capacity to manipulate a wheelchair around 90 degrees. And also not all wheelchairs are the same. So if you have a standard wheelchair, great. But if you have a recline wheelchair or one that requires elevated leg rest, you may not get through a standard 5-foot circle that is identified in universal design for wheelchairs. So just a couple of case studies. I was dealing with one case where a 90-year-old woman was sold a walk-in bathtub. Everybody was really well-meaning in this project, but nobody assessed mom, and she did not have enough sitting balance to sit in the bathtub unaided. She ended up sliding to the bottom of the tub. Thank God she was okay. They fished her out, but they ended up deinstalling the walk-in tub, and I was involved in making the recommendations that followed that. An 80-year-old couple called. They wanted to fall-proof their bathroom. So you come in thinking this is going to be somebody who's maybe got a mobility issue, and we find out that the wife is legally blind. Okay, so what are the recommendations in that case then? What do we have to think about? This is somebody who was legally blind but functioning well because she's lived in her home since 1961. So those are the kinds of things that an occupational therapist can help you negotiate. But I think the biggest one was this one, this 72-year-old woman. She's an active cyclist, got hit by a car. One of the legs, the bones in the leg was non-union, so it wasn't knitting together, wasn't healing. She needed a bathroom modification done because her sister was caring for her, and she no longer wanted her sister to actually shower her. So to save money, she says, I'm going to handle this by myself. She got a contractor who was not a CHBA contractor, I would just say that, and found that when I went in later on another issue and asked how this modification was going, we went in and found that they took the bathtub out, but they put in a base that had a 4-inch lip. So she actually couldn't use it because she was so walker dependent. And then they put a fold down seat at one end. So the back of the where the bathtub was going to be, the controls were still in the existing place. So she actually couldn't turn the shower on without standing up and walking over, which she couldn't do because of her injuries. And I sort of pointed that out to her and I said, look, you spend all this money and your sister still has to actually help you because you can't do this alone or safely. And it was really unfortunate because I saw by the look on her face that she realized that she'd really made a mistake. And I think she said, well, it's too late now, but there's another bathroom and perhaps you can come in and help me figure out what I'm going to need and to make that bathroom accessible. And so we're involved with that. So, this is really where the difference between renovation and modification, where the rubber hits the road. You need to sort of know some of those technical issues. And I challenge you all that go into hotels, have an ask and have a look at their accessible suites. And what you may find is that there's grab bars or there's railings or it may be a roll-in shower. But more often than not, the towel racks are still above the toilet where nobody in a wheelchair would be able to reach. So those are the kinds of things that you have to be able to think through to make things accessible. So the take-home messages for renovator contractors: modification does not equal renovation. Getting a team together can help define project based on the client, their current and future health status, and their environment, and what do they do in that environment, which is the really important thing. That's their occupational part. Having an occupational therapist on the project can help navigate through the health issues and really help to sort of really put to a fine point what are the things that you're needing to modify and why. An OT can offer assessment that can build a case for an expanded project scope, which is always good for business. And the best outcome is based on everybody working together, but staying in their own lane. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leisha. That was fantastic. What I really loved was your comment that OTs can predict issues and ask the tough questions. And as a renovator, I feel like I have plenty of tough questions that I need to ask my clients as it is. So I don't need any more. So I think that's that sold me right there on your value, for sure. Aside from all of the other great things that an occupational therapist would do, but yes, I'm sure all the other renovators on the call can appreciate that we have enough tough questions to ask. Wanted to just quickly just share a couple of my own experiences on some home modifications that we've been involved in. I've been involved in many. Some have been very successful. Some have been moderately successful, and some haven't really worked out at all. But everything from a client who had a motorcycle accident and was a paraplegic, to some people who've lost their sight, to lots of aging in place. And just as Don said, I kind of one of my first experiences is my father, my parents in their own home, and looking at them as they've tried to navigate themselves aging. My father has muscular dystrophy, and so we know where things are going, and he's going to lose a lot of his mobility. He is intent for sure on staying in his own home. It's something that he built with his own two hands with my mom. So he says there's no way I'm moving out of this, but he's still bucking a little bit of that trend of bringing in professionals to help, like an occupational therapist, and just keeps addressing each issue as it comes up. So as he loses a little bit more mobility, he'll put in the stair lift and different things, and then he's building a ramp on the outside so that he can get in into the house. So you've got those clients, and I think as renovators, we certainly need to be able to ask some of those tough questions early on to say, hey, let's think far ahead, because we don't want to be spending a lot of money redoing things. And Leisha brought up a good example of having to redo things. But there's also the example of The Simpsons, and this project for me happened probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And Mr. Simpson was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and also had a few cognitive issues as well. So again, they knew where things were going, and they absolutely loved their house. They were very smart, and they did enlist the help of their occupational therapist, and they enlisted the help of their healthcare professionals as well. And so very early on, when Mr. Simpson still had a lot of mobility, they contacted me, and we took on a large project to build a main floor ensuite and master bedroom addition. And the whole project was completed well ahead of time, so that they were not under a lot of stress to make sure that the house was needing to be done immediately, so that he could continue to live in his house, or they didn't have to make alternate arrangements. So they were able to really take a look at that as a big holistic project, and make sure that it worked very well for them. And then they were able to engage my expertise to make it a house that she would be able to continue to live in, that would have really good resale value. And 7 years later, Mr. Simpson has passed away, but he was able to live in the home throughout his entire illness, and we were able to make sure that things like those curbless showers were installed, and things he was able to access all of the controls for the shower, and how were we going to make sure that that toilet worked for him, and even lifts above the bed, etc. So it really highlighted for me that the importance of making sure that our clients look ahead, and we force them to look ahead and ask some of the tougher questions, and then pass it over to an occupational therapist to ask some of the even tougher questions. Because when you look at it and you say, hey, we could complete this whole entire renovation ahead of time and in advance and not be under a lot of stress, they were able to just focus on making Mr. Simpson's life a whole lot better at the end, versus trying to figure out how to make it work, or having to put him into a home where they had agreed as a family they did not want to go. So Don and Leisha, thanks very much for all of your insights. I'd like to turn it over to Dina. Dina is the program director. Sorry, I was going to say the chair, but the program director of renovation services at the Canadian Home Builders Association. She's the project manager for the development of the first Canadian course on home modifications for renovators. And this course presents an opportunity for renovators to gain the knowledge required to support homeowners living with a disability or those wishing to age safely and comfortably in their home. Dina is also the staff lead for CHPA's Adaptive Home Council, a coordination point of expertise, resources, and services for homeowners with a variety of needs. CHPA strives to provide necessary support to its members who are active or who want to become active in the aging in place market. So Dina, I will turn this over to you.
Thanks, Jamie. And sometimes I don't even know what my title is, so no worries there. I could be the chair if you want. And hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here today to give everyone an update on the activities that CHBA National is undertaking to support renovators who work or want to work in the aging in place market. So as Don said and Leisha, we all know Canadians want to live safely and comfortably at home for as long as they can. In most cases, this means that they will have to modify their home environment to accommodate their new realities. And who best to complete these projects than the professional renovators who are members of CHBA. So back in 2017, with the support and guidance of Don and Leisha and others, CHBA put in place the Home Modification Council, which is now called the Adaptive Home Council. This is a group of renovators and other professionals, such as occupational therapists from across the country who come together to determine what renovators need to support Canadians who want to age in place. So the council identified very early on the need to provide training to renovators to support this growing market. Renovators require a learning program to help them support the aging population and their largest investment, their home. So to put this program in place, CHBA recruited a team of experts to develop a series of modules focused on home modifications for seniors. This team includes a professional renovator, Gary, as most of you know, an interior designer, an occupational therapist, and a kitchen and bath expert. The experts have extensive experience in this field and have worked on an impressive number of projects to support individuals who want to live at home safely. The course manual includes 24 chapters that cover topics such as privacy and legal considerations, construction guidelines for a walk-in shower, for example, building code considerations, professional partnerships with occupational therapists and interior designers, and/or home automation, fire safety, and the list goes on. This course will ensure renovators receive the construction knowledge they need to be able to take on these projects. Also, the course will provide enough information on specialized subjects, such as lighting and indoor air quality, to help renovators have informed conversations with their clients and other professionals in this space. I'm happy to report that the first draft of the content is now complete. We have 400 pages. It's, like I said, 24 chapters, so a lot of work has been put into this. CHBA did receive feedback from 10 members, and the content has been adjusted based on their comments. We are now preparing to offer the course to a small group of members as a proof of concept. We want to make sure we get it right and provide the information in a format that is easy to digest. Following the proof of concept, which we're aiming for October or end of this month or October, the course will be offered to CHBA members and the general population. And I know the million-dollar question is, when will this course be offered? And the answer is, I know you're not going to like it, is we're working on it. And we appreciate everyone's patience. We're working as fast as we can while making sure that we produce something that will be helpful, high quality, and good resources for members. The format of this, I'll go through this very quickly. Due to COVID restrictions, we can't do in-class sessions. So this will be online, instructor-led modules, and the modules will be approximately 1 hour in length, and there will be several before the completion of the course. So participants will have to log on a specific date at a specific time to complete the module. At the same time, we're also working on online modules that would allow the renovators to take it based on their schedule, but that's in the works, and that will come later, probably in 2022, because the instructor-led sessions will allow us to get this out to members faster. And then once all the modules are completed, there will be a final exam. A 75% pass rate must be obtained in order to receive a certificate of completion. Following the pandemic, if we ever get out of this, CHBA is looking at the option of offering in-class, the course in class with a live instructor to encourage networking and interaction between participants, as well as support different learning styles. Also, to support all of this learning, we're looking at putting in place an adaptive home webinar series to complement the course. So this would be a series of experts that would be invited to present concepts or new products to help inform CHBA members who are active in this space. Three that we have on the radar right now is wellness in the home, so indoor air quality, off-gassing, what that means for the homeowners and people with disabilities or aging, and what that means for the renovator as well. Home automation, the technology is endless, what it can do, when to bring it in, how to incorporate that in the project. Also, multi-generational living, we know that that's a reality, and how to make sure that the renovations accommodate a 2-year-old and an 82-year-old maybe living in the same home. So the intention of these webinars is not to make the renovator the expert, it's to provide enough information for them to have an informed conversation with the client, with the expert, and understand when to bring the experts in. So I look forward to launching the training course. I'm as anxious as you guys to get it out the door, as well as the webinars, and continue to create more tools to assist renovators across the country. We want everyone to be comfortable in their home, regardless of their age and condition. So thanks for participating today. I'll be able to answer any of your questions. I don't think we have that much time, but my email is on the screen. Feel free to send me an email today or whenever if you have any questions about the program or anything that CHBA does for members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dina. Elena, I know it is 10 o'clock, right on the button. Maybe this question is for Dawn and Leisha and Dina, but do you have a few more minutes to stick on the call for a few questions and answers? And for those of you that do have some questions, if you wouldn't mind throwing those in the Q&A now. If you need to leave because of other commitments, certainly understand that, but any questions and answers, certainly feel free to enter those in. We do have one question from, I believe it's Kavita. Can we have a recording of this session? And so Ellen, I'm not sure if that is possible, be able to do that?
Yes. The webinar will be uploaded on YouTube and it will be sent to all the registrants, and it's going to be public for everyone to access it on our YouTube channel as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
I'm going to go with the moderator's prerogative and throw in a question. A lot of folks that are aging in place are not necessarily in a freehold townhouse or single family home. What are some of the challenges either Jamie you've experienced or other panelists have experienced in terms of dealing with condominium corporations, boards, coming in to sort of provide some of those modifications in a multi-unit, perhaps a condominium residence?
That's a great question, Mike. I personally haven't had any experiences out in any common areas. We've gone through and made some accommodations for more accessible bathrooms and showers, etc. But perhaps Dawn and Leisha would be better to answer that if they've got any experiences there.
Definitely, I think the challenge that I come up with is if they're in a rental space, then you're always having to deal with the super, and we just want to make sure that things are done properly, and grab bars and so on are installed in the right place and in the right orientation. It gets a little bit more difficult when people have scooters and have to accommodate pieces of equipment like that, and where they're going to charge, and sometimes that becomes an issue. But this is really where I think the some diplomacy and somebody who can speak on behalf of the client, the resident, and also the contractor can go a long way. Where I find it frustrating is sometimes they will only have their own contractors do the work. And so unfortunately, that's something that we have to abide with. So I think those are the scenarios that are come up most often.
Okay, thank you very much. So we do have a question from John Ambrosio. So I'll throw this out. What percentage of clients require government support for home modifications compared to homeowners that pay for the upgrades themselves? Don, perhaps you're the expert on that with some of your statistics that you had.
Yes, thanks for the question, but it would vary from government to government and province to province, because you have, for instance, the $10 million that comes from the Ontario government to the March of Dimes program is basically gone the day they get it. So there's much more applicants that are rejected than are accepted. And that's why this research was done, in order to prove to the governments the need, although I think they do understand it. And so I would say that it's a very low percentage that get publicly funded. It's those that can move fast enough for the March of Dimes. There are other areas that do funding, but it's minimal. I suggest, and I get a lot of calls from people who are desperate, that if they go to their local service clubs, Lions Club, Rotary clubs, those people in a community will be able to move very quickly to $3,000 to $4,000 to $5,000 to help somebody out who needs some segue to the bigger money.
I think too that, maybe this is really good timing. When Don and I first presented to the board, to the CHBA board, I think, I forget who it was, but one of the executives said, we do a program already for reducing energy loss in houses, the Intercare program. So why can't we have occupational therapists be the auditors that go into the home and then incentivize, through the government, people to make those changes, and then have them come back and see whether they made those modifications and get the tax credit or whatever. And maybe this is the right time to have that conversation, because clearly people are wanting to do it and they just maybe need that incentive to do it. And CHBA has a track record of implementing programs that have been really successful. And I can tell you that everybody who we've talked, Don and I've talked to and mentioned that, they've said, oh yeah, well, I just got my windows and doors done. So it's clearly working.
Just to give you an example, for instance, in the bigger picture, in the UK, all home modifications actually fund through a private source called Foundations, which is basically partnered with the health service in the UK, which is very similar to our Medicare. So, but they're funded to the tune of 1 billion Canadian dollars. 1 billion. In Canada, we might have funding with everything added on to what the March of Dimes does as the biggest funder, to maybe reach $40 million in this country. Totally inadequate. And that's where we're fighting with, not fighting, but that's where we're presenting to MPs and anybody that'll listen on the research that we've viewed here today. So a big need for the vulnerable seniors, but also for others, to keep them on a long-term care. We didn't get into the cost, by the way, of long-term care and other, it's just exorbitant. We'd be shocked to find out. Cost of a hospital bed in Ontario is $1,000 a day, for instance.
All right, thank you very much. So that has to be the end of our Q&A, because our panelists do have some other engagements to get to. So I want to, again, thank everybody. I want to thank Enbridge for sponsoring this. Very, very enlightening. We've got a lot of great comments in our chat, and thank you. So we will get that one outstanding question of where we can find the occupational therapists in our area. We'll get that answer out to everybody. But thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing everybody on part 2 of this webinar series at a later date. I don't think we have the date set yet, right? Eleanor or Mike?
No, not yet. We will follow up.
Yeah. All right. Stay tuned. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.